Hey, welcome back, it's NukaViolet here. Before we get started, I wanted to give a special shout out to all my subscribers and anyone that's liking or commenting on my videos. You guys are the reason why I keep consistently uploading, and I wanted to let you know that I really appreciate it. Now let's talk about lighting. It's one of those things that obviously everyone uses in their camp, but not a lot of people think too deeply about where they're placing it and what look they're trying to achieve. When you use light effectively, you massively enhance the look of your camp. In this video, you're going to learn about the different types of light and how to use light in your space. And then I'm going to show you how to hide light using walls and merging techniques. And as a little added bonus, I gathered a few examples from other builders that I think use light strategically. So whether you're a seasoned builder or just starting out, you'll probably learn something from this video. I put this display together so you guys could see the range of light that we have to choose from. From the left, we have the cool lights all the way to warm tones. And then we have a few varieties of colored lights. So as I bring you guys in closer, you can see that the cool lights are extremely bright, almost a little bit too bright. But they do have their place in camp building. Next, we have the mid-range light. And this one is great when you want to illuminate a room without it being too overpowering. Next we have the warm tones, and I really like to use these when I'm trying to get that cozy feeling or if I want to add some accent lights. Lastly, we have the colored lights, and I think these are probably my favorite. As an artist, I really love to use color, and these are always fun to play with. I wanted to show you what these lights look like in action. As you can see here on the left hand side, we have this object, and it's extremely overexposed. I'm using that bright interrogation light, and it's just blowing out all the details on her face. The next light gives you that nice, gentle, diffused look. This one is nice because it still gives you a pretty good illumination of the room without being overpowering. With the warm tone lights, you end up drastically changing the look and color of the room. So just be mindful of that. And then with the colored lights, you can actually mix and match and create different gradients, which I'll show you guys later in the video. In one of my builds, I used the purple cycling lights paired with the pickled brains. This made it a little bit more interesting because I used complementary colors. There's a lot of different lights in the camp building mode that are not listed under the light category, like the plasma ball or the pickled brains. Most of them are not very bright, but you can still use them as accent lights in your camp. Knowing the different light types will help you decide whether or not you need light in a specific area. Light types can be broken down into these three categories: ambient, accent, and task. Ambient lighting is a general purpose light. This light is just used to illuminate a space. Accent lighting does the opposite, and it wants to draw your attention to something specific in the room. In this case, it's going to be the cat picture. A good example of this light type is the one that I used in my Batman Lake House build. I made a custom emblem and I wanted more emphasis drawn to that area. So I used the asylum light and placed it directly above it. And that's exactly where you look when you walk into the room. Lastly, we have task lighting, and it's exactly what it sounds like. You use it to complete a task. For example, you would put it above your workbench where you're going to be crafting ammo, or if you have a modern house, you would put it above your sink where your character would be doing something. I'll show you a couple of my builds so you can get a better sense of how to use these three light types. In my music store build, I have a little banjo display. And it looks like the light is shining down on it from the ceiling, but it's actually hidden behind it right here. This is considered an accent light. I have another accent light back here on the wall to highlight my custom artwork. In this build, I used mostly ambient lighting. The only accent light I used was to highlight the sign on top of the building. In this kitchen build, I used all three light types: ambient, accent, and task. I also wanted to show you how to illuminate a room without the physical light being seen. If you want to take your camp building to the next level, this is a must know. The first thing I wanted to show you is how I got this light coming from the ceiling. Now if I take away this wall, you can see I have a light hovering right above the roof, and I did this using a shelf. One upside to using this technique is that a lot of lights will actually work with this method. As long as the light will fit underneath the shelf, then it'll work. You can actually modify the intensity of this light by moving the shelf up or down. I have another light here on this wall, and it's the icicle light. This method is actually pretty straightforward. First you want to place your wall, or double wall, which I like to use because it's thicker and easier to place the light. Then you want to grab the flamethrower and destroy the wall. Now you're going to pick your light, and I like to pick the icicle light because it's a little easier to start with. And you're going to sandwich it right in between these two walls. You want to make sure that it's right in the center so that you don't see it on either side. And then just repair the wall and you're done. One of the techniques that I use all the time is merging lights into objects. First you want to pick your light, and I like to use this one because it's really small and it fits in most objects. Then once you pick your object, you want to place the light right in the center. You want to put it in the center so that when it sinks down, it's not poking through the sides anywhere. This is just going to make it look cleaner in the end. Then once you have it placed, you want to bring it over to a pressure plate. Now I'm doing this in World, so I don't need to stand on the pressure plate, but if you're doing this in adventure mode, you have to stand on it. If you have the mannequins unlocked, I highly recommend using those because then you won't have to stand on it and you can actually see what you're doing. Once you have it sunken down as far as you want it to go, you just move it in place and you have your custom light. This is so easy to do, and I think it makes a pretty big impact on your camp, especially if you have it in a lot of different places. I use this technique a lot in my modern builds. You can see it here in this planter. This is actually a double merge. I merge the light into the planter and then the planter into a stool to make a custom plant stand. To make your builds more dynamic and interesting, you should layer your lights. And I don't mean just stacking one light on top of another, I mean using multiple lights in an area so that it draws your eye around the space. For example, in one of my kitchen builds, I used 3 different lights in the space. The first light is actually hidden behind this cabinet using that shelf method that I showed you earlier. The pickled brains give a really nice accent light that reflects off the refrigerator. The sink light draws your eye towards the right and creates the final focal point. In my lake house build, I merged 2 candles inside of the car headlights. I did this because I wanted to draw a little bit more attention to the car. In the front of the house, I have my first light is a foundation merge, which I'll show you how to do a little bit later. My second light is a fire pit merged into a table, which is merged into a foundation. The third light source are lights merged into these plants, which are then merged into the foundation as well. I'm going to go ahead and show you guys how to do this foundation merge. First you want to pick your light, and it's a lot easier if you use a floor light. And then you're going to place it where you want it to sink down. Next you're going to look for a hill. This can be a steep hill or a slight incline. The steeper the hill, the faster your object will sink down into the foundation. This is the tricky part. Once you place your foundation, you want to jump right on top of the edge of it and then look down. And then you want to grab your foundation and pull it straight down. You'll know you're doing it right because the foundation will look like it pops back up. And if you're not sure, then just look up at the object and see if it's sunk down a little bit. If it's not sinking down, then you might just not be standing on the right part of the foundation. It's a little hard to explain it, but once you get it down, it's really easy to do. So every once in a while you might go a little bit too far with your light merge and it actually goes under the foundation. If this happens, the best thing to do is just scrap the whole thing and start over again. I used the foundation merge to sink these defense walls into the ground, and I think it gave it a really unique look. I used that same technique to sink the little cat lights into the foundation on the edge so that I could create a little pathway into the space. I wanted to show you what it looks like to use light strategically in a space. This room represents what an average camp builder would do with lighting. My first observation is that this room is pretty boring. And it's not because of the way that it's decorated, it's because of the way that they use the light. If you look up at the ceiling, you'll notice that the light being used is that harsh white interrogation light. Now because this room is so small, even if you were to use some little accent lights, this main light would just wash them out because it's so bright and overpowered. If I wanted to redesign this space, this is how I would lay it out. You can see this room looks a lot different, and all I did was change the lighting. Here's a side-by-side comparison. The room on the left is extremely overexposed. All the objects in the room carry the same amount of weight visually, and this makes it so that everything is basically screaming for your attention. Your brain is telling your eyes to look away because it's too much information to process all at once. A way to counteract this effect is to use a few different accent lights. This not only makes it a lot easier for your brain to process, but makes the room more interesting. The room on the right has more intense colors, and that's because the main light source isn't washing them out. A good example is to compare the two posters. Even the car bed, the carpet, and the clock have more color intensity than the room on the left. This is a really good thing to keep in mind when you're building your space, how the light interacts with the objects in your room. I wanted to show you which lights I actually changed. I took out the overhead light and added the blue icicle light. This is actually hidden in the wall in the very back, using that same technique that I showed you earlier. You can see that it gives a really nice glow to all the objects in the room, and nothing is being washed out. Even the wallpaper seems to have more vibrance to it, and it's kind of weird because you'd think it would be the opposite with less light, but it really isn't the case. One of the lights that I added was this little lantern, and I merged it into the plant to kind of blend it in a little bit more and make it more interesting. My next room is pretty dark, even though I used 3 different lights, and that's because the lights that I chose are dim. When you're trying to portray a certain mood, it's a little bit easier to do it with light. Using the red lights that are kind of dim adds to that whole spooky feeling. It's much more effective than if I just placed a bright light in the middle of the room. Light placement actually has a big impact on what your scene looks like. I'm going to take this overhead light and move it forward a couple inches, and you're going to see what it does to the Nuka girl. Now she's overexposed, and all I did was move it a couple of inches. I'm going to move this light a little bit more forward. Now the Nuka girl is no longer overexposed, and you can see there's actually more emphasis on these Nuka bottles. So depending on where I place this light, I can draw your eye to different areas of the room. For example, if I take this light and move it further away from her, all the emphasis is now going to be on these Nuka bottles. You still see her, but she's not the most prominent thing in the room. Now if I do the opposite and move this light all the way back towards the wallpaper, then there won't be any emphasis on the Nuka bottles and it'll all be directed towards the back. If I want an even emphasis on both her and the Nuka bottles, then I need to have 2 different lights, one to highlight her and one for the bottles. I'm going to go ahead and add another light. I'm going to pull it forward until I think it highlights the bottles exactly how I want it. Now you can see there's emphasis on the wallpaper on her and the Nuka bottles without having anything overexposed. Just by learning that one trick, your camp will look a lot more professional. One way to make your camp stand out from the rest is to use lighting effects. I have yet to walk into a camp randomly and see this technique being used. It's when you use 2 or more lights, but you place them far enough away from each other that they create a color gradient. And this gradient could be on the wall or it could be on objects. It just depends on where you're placing them. A good way to get the color scheme you're trying to achieve is to use a color wheel. For example, if I use a yellow light paired with a purple light, then I'm going to get all of these colors in between. In this display case, I have 2 cycling lights. On the left, I have a purpley lavender color, and on the right, I have like an orangey kind of mango looking color. The pairing of these 2 lights gives me a color gradient, and I end up with this light pink color in the center. Then on the outside of the display case, you have the darker version of both of those colors. To get this color gradient, I used an orange light on the top and a blue light on the bottom. So not only can you create some really cool color gradients using walls, but you can further intensify these using textures. When you use a wallpaper or door frame or even a window or a roof piece that has like a 3-dimensional property to it, you get the added benefits of having highlights and shadows. This makes the gradient pop even more. Hidden inside of this wall, I have a blue icicle light and a green cycling light. The only reason why you're able to see the light through the wall is because of the wallpaper that I used. I'll talk more about the wallpapers in a second, but before that I wanted to show you what it looks like behind this wall. I used the same technique that I showed you earlier to get this look. If you take these 2 lights and move them further away from each other, then you're going to have a greater color variance. I just switched the green cycling light to a red light, and you could see right in between these 2 lights I now have a color gradient of magenta. Now let's get back to the wallpapers. You can change the look of this light gradient by flipping the wallpapers to different textures. So right here you can see with the steel walls, now I still have that gradient, but it takes on the texture of the wallpaper. Now I know not everyone has these wallpapers unlocked, but the cool thing is you can actually use this same technique with the regular plans in the game. For example, you can use the brick wall or even the wooden wall, the one that you get when you first start out. So I'm not gonna lie here, I spent a considerable amount of time just geeking out over these different wallpapers because it's almost like you unlocked something from the atomic shop. It's like a brand new item. Just beware, once you start doing this, you're not going to be able to stop. It's super addictive. If you're not feeling all these crazy colors, you can actually just use the white light and still get this effect. It's so simple and easy to do, and it has such a huge impact on the way your camp looks. By having the lights inside of the wall, you can get some really cool effects when the light shines through objects that are placed on that wall. I placed some ghoul mounted heads on this wall where I had some hidden blue icicle lights at the bottom, and then at the top I had the red cycling light. This gave that gradient effect, but instead of being horizontal, it was vertical. You can make your camp feel more like it's part of the Fallout universe, just by using lights that are appropriate for your build type. In my auto mechanics build, I used lights that I thought resembled shop lights. If instead I had used like a chandelier or candles, it wouldn't give you that same scrappy vibe. In my western build, I only used lanterns and candles. For all my scrappy builds, I pretty much used the same set of lights, and that would be the caged bulb lights, candles, lanterns, and any kind of fire pit that doesn't look modern. And for my modern builds, it would be the opposite. I wouldn't be using 1,000 lanterns to light everything up. I think you get where I'm going with this. Every once in a while, I'll have a build that's unique and it uses a little bit of both. But I'm always still thinking about how those lights work with my build, and not just putting them in because I like the way the light looks in general. I got a few questions from viewers and I wanted to go ahead and go over those now. The first question was, what are some ways I can display my collections? One of the ways that I really like to light my display is by using a shelf. So first you want to get your shelf and then you're going to place your light directly underneath it. Then you're going to drag your shelf down until it looks like it's going to be right underneath the glass of the display case. Then you're going to grab your flamethrower and destroy the light, the shelf, and the wall behind it. I like to destroy the wall also because you can kind of nudge the display case a little bit further back. After everything's destroyed, you want to move your display case and try to line it up exactly where you had your shelf, and then you're just going to rebuild everything and then you have your custom light. Sometimes I like to set up my displays so that they're not against the wall. The first step is destroying the displays with the flamer. And then you're going to select your floor light. And this needs to be a light that's small enough to fit inside of the display case without poking through. Not all the floor lights will work for this. And then you just repair everything and you have your custom lighted display. For this display case, I used 2 different lights stacked on top of each other. I wanted to do this because I like the brightness of one of the lights, but then the warm tones from the other. So merging them together gives me the best of both worlds. This is the setup inside of the display case. And if you want to have the custom letters like how I did here, you need to either put them on the wall before you build the display case, or you can build the display case, destroy it, and then place your letters. For this display, I used the cycling lights connected to the shelf. And I really like using the shelf because you can also place items on top of the shelf, and it looks like they're on top of the display case. You can hide the cycling lights in the wall like I showed you with the brick wall, but the only downside to that is they don't really shine through very bright. So in order to have that brightness, you need to have them on the outside of the wall. I wanted to show you this display case setup too because I really like using it for weapons, particularly pistols because they fit really well. I think it looks a lot better than those little pegboards that we have. This display is a little bit more technical than the other versions, but I think based on what it looks like, it's totally worth it. I have some camp items on the bottom shelf and this is optional. But if you wanted to put those in, you just use the pressure plate method that I showed you earlier. To make this display, you're going to need this white shelf. And if you want to put anything on the shelves, you're going to have to merge those first. Then you're going to get your pegboard and place the weapons that you want to be in the display. Next, you want to pick one of the light up posters. I like to use this one because it's really thin and I like the style of the light. I like to use this foundation with this floor because it helps me line everything up, and I'll show you a little shortcut for that when we go to place everything. The first thing you want to do is get your poster and line it up with the foundation. You want it to be as center as possible. Then you want to pick up your first pegboard and line it up with the top of your poster. Now, depending on how high or low you place your poster, you might have to reposition these weapons so that they fit perfectly on the shelf. Once you're done placing your weapons, you want to grab the flamethrower and destroy the pegboards and the poster. Then you're going to pick up your display and bring it over to the poster. This is the little trick that I was telling you about earlier where you use the foundation to line everything up. Based on trial and error, I have found that this black line right here is a perfect spot to line everything up. If you place the display right on that black line and then push it back so you see some of the gold tile, then everything is lined up perfectly and you shouldn't have to do it again. And then once you line everything up, I use the camp module to rebuild everything. And then you're left with your perfectly lit display case with all your custom items inside. You can replicate this same look with the Thanksgiving display. To make this 1,000 times easier, if you have the Brotherhood of Steel walls, you should use those. For some reason, they're like magic walls and they let you place specific items differently than the normal walls do. So in this case, you don't actually have to destroy anything. You just place your poster and then pick up your display and move it in front until only the guns are showing through. I also wanted to mention that if you try to pick up the display case and when you're too close, then it'll always stay red and it just won't place. You're better off staying further back and then it'll stay green. If you're not a fan of the glass display cases, then this is just another option. The next question was, how do I hide lights in my landscape, and can I place lights in trees? For landscape lighting, I like to keep it pretty simple. I pick a small floor light and then I just place it directly in the grass, and I try to hide it so that you can't really see it. Like here, you don't really want it poking out, so just kind of stick it in so from far away it looks really nice. This technique also works with trees in the game. I found this really cool tree in the swamp that had this exaggerated root system, and I wanted to amplify that by using a light, so I placed it inside and it gave it this really high contrast look. Having a bunch of small details like this helps your camp stand out from everyone else's because it's more unique. I used 3 little accent lights hidden in the grass here. And that same technique is duplicated for this build. As far as the trees go, I know the ones from the Atom shop you can place lights on. The snapping point for these is kind of a little bit ridiculous. Depending on which light you're trying to choose, it could be a lot harder or easier to find that snapping point. The downside to putting lights in the trees is that most of the lights that we have to choose from just don't look right. The one that I think actually looks the best is just the regular plain light bulb, or you can change it to the cycling light. You can see what I mean here, where this light just looks like it's floating in the air, and I'm not in Fallout Worlds, I'm in adventure mode. This is kind of a hit or miss. I usually won't even bother putting anything in the trees, because it usually ends up just looking weird. What I do is place a light on the ground and shine it up into the trees as an accent light. I wanted to show you a few more examples from other builders and how they use light in their camps. First up, we have Bad Notions with his UFO camp. This is an excellent example of how to use light to draw your viewer into a specific area. It wouldn't quite have that same effect if he had just placed lights around the entire ship. I also like how he used the purple lights to give it more of that extraterrestrial look. The edit for this was done by Uranium Fever, and it's pretty funny. You should definitely check it out. I'll post a link below. Next up we have Logan RTX, and he has his own YouTube channel. He likes to create builds that are really upscale and luxurious. Most of the exterior lights are hidden inside of the walls or behind. His interiors feature almost all accent lights. And remember, that's what you want. Accent lights guide the viewer through the space. Next up we have Radrux, and he streams Fallout from Twitch every week. He built this amazingly lit Mothman camp. This is a great example of using lights that are appropriate for your build type. He also used the gradient technique with the orange and blue lights. This gave the build a more captivating and memorable look. Next up we have Aqua Nova, who also has her own YouTube channel. She's pretty much known for her lighting, but this stood out to me in particular. This is a great example of light and object integration. The way she placed the steel post causes the light to reflect off all the way through as you're walking around. The lighting and objects are seamless. Next up we have KHALIL Smooth. He specializes in modern builds. You can tell that he gets a lot of inspiration from real-life homes. You'll see many accent lights highlighting the landscape and architecture. All of the lighting seems to have a purpose, whether it's guiding the viewer through the space or highlighting specific areas of the camp. Next we have VAPID Valentine, who also has a YouTube channel. V has a totally different take on how to present a camp, by using lots and lots of dim lighting. This just shows that you don't need to have a lot of bright light to make it an interesting camp. Even though there are many different lights and lots of different objects in this camp, it still works. And that's because it's consistent the entire way through. Everything is evenly lit and distributed throughout the camp. This is another technique that you can use in your own builds. Lastly, we have Uranium Fever. You can watch his videos on YouTube. What I like about this build in particular is the lack of light. Remember that room that I showed you guys with the 3 liberators and the clown in the tub? And I said sometimes it's easier to portray a certain mood with light? Well, this is exactly what I was talking about. The lack of lighting gives you this really uneasy feeling, and it goes with the storyline really well. I don't want to spoil it for you guys just in case you want to watch the whole thing on his YouTube channel, so I'm going to go ahead and stop it here. If you want to show some love to these builders, please check out their channels below. I'm going to put it in the description. I'm sure they'd really appreciate it. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I really liked making it for you. Hopefully you learned something from it, and if not, at least got some ideas for your next build. I really appreciate you guys watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Thanks.